go at the San Diego Comic Con.
Alligator on pizza? That sounds crazy.
Alligator is meat, and meat goes on pizza because pizza is breaded. You put it in. You can put it in a sandwich. So alligator sandwich and alligator pizza.
The funniest thing I ever had on a pizza, at least funny looking, was it was back when I was in college. We used to go. What was the name? Pizza and Brew was the name of the place over in Westchester.
I used to go there.
Oh, okay. And we got, because someone wanted it, spinach on pizza. Now, I was expecting like maybe a chopped spinach on the pizza. Instead, it was this green tarp over the entire top of the pizza. And I was just like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Do you know who Jamie Oliver is?
I don't think so.
I know the name. It's a television personality.
He's a British celebrity chef.
Okay.
So he's not on Food Network. He's on the other food channel. I can't remember the name. The guy goes out to his garden and takes out kale straight from the dirt, washes it, and puts it on a pizza. Just like very large leaves, like this size, and puts it on a pizza. And olive oil. Okay, olive oil is okay, but like he dumps a whole gallon of olive oil on a dude.
But isn't that to your rationale earlier that if it goes into a sandwich, it could go on a pizza, and there are some sandwiches that have greens on it.
Yeah, lettuce goes on a sandwich all the time.
Yeah, but not kale.
Good evening, Finity, the timey-wimey limey. Paulo's complaining about your limey celebrity chef.
So today, nobody likes Jamie Oliver. Only housewives.
Okay.
Now, I have to show you guys this. I told you last week that I decided I was going to, instead of getting new issues of Back Issue, I was just going to go to my shelf and read some of the old issues I've got at Back Issue. I mean, here's the one I was checking out. And it's from June of 2009. So, of course, what is that? Coming up on 16 years?
Something like that, yeah.
And so it's still a modern comic?
Yep.
Still a modern comic. But to tie into last week's show, one of the articles, Sparks in a Bottle, the saga of the new universe.
Look at that. Topical to us.
Since we were talking about the new universe last week, and I remembered a couple of things from the article. Maybe but I didn't remember most of it, and I didn't remember they interviewed Elliot Brown for a bit of it too.
Oh, did they?
Elliot, we both know from our Marvel days. He used to come into the office all the time. And I was never really sure because I know he used to be on staff at Marvel at least a couple of times. Like, this is pre-90s when we were there. But I was never really exactly sure what he did when he was on staff. But, and I'm still not exactly sure what he did on staff before he was hired as one of the an assistant editor on the New Universe. And I also didn't realize that he and Jack Morelli, I knew he was there right before I was in the late 80s. He was a letterer. And he was a bullpen letterer. Then he went freelance, and he's still lettering to this day. He letters a bunch of stuff. Usually I'll mention his name when the horror books from Archie that I buy, he's lettered almost all of them. So he's still around and lettering. But he and Elliot created, which one was it? Let's see. Spitfire and the Troubleshooters, created by Brown and Morelli.
So he could draw the schematics to the armors.
Yes, he draws all the schematic. He drew all the schematic stuff in the 90s. But it was real interesting because I knew that there was supposed to be a budget, but then there wasn't a budget.
Yep.
But it says something like, where does it say? I also originally, like, Jim Shooter wanted to, because this was all the brainchild of Jim Shooter too, the New Universe, because he wanted to sell the 25th anniversary of the Marvel Universe was coming up. And Jim Shooter actually wanted to end the Marvel Universe and start it all over again. But James Galton was like, no. He was the publisher, and he's like, our sales were booming then. By the way, we held a nearly 70% market share. Galton was afraid to mess with success. I don't know if that's afraid or smart.
Yeah.
Right. If it ain't broke, don't,
Right. But yeah, the launch of a new Marvel universe was sort of a compromise. But then it started. It was going to come out at the time that they were ready to sell the company.
Here's what it says. Since they wouldn't let me do Plan A, I proposed Plan B. This is Shooter. Celebrate the 25th birthday of one universe by creating another, a new universe, says Shooter. That flew, and I was given a budget of $120,000, big money in those days, to develop 8 new titles with which to launch the new universe, and promised a massive advertising promotional PR campaign, as well as support staff, bonus money to ensure that we're able to get top drawer creators. But, as Paulo just mentioned, even before Shooter could get the new universe underway, the first of several problems sprang up that worked to hinder the line. Marvel's parent company, Cadence Industries, was taken private by its board under the name Cadence Management Incorporated, says Shooter. The CMI immediately began to sell off the pieces of Cadence, including Marvel, to make a quick windfall profit for themselves. That put enormous pressure on Marvel to cut costs and increase revenues to maximize profit gained from a sale. One of the casualties of that effort was my budget for creating, developing, and establishing the universe. It was simply removed, cut down to zero. So he went from $120,000 to make the new universe to nothing, which is why they didn't have big creators.
Right.
Listen, I wonder what happened to that Starman #1 I once had. It got left behind on, or purged on some move. The real new universe was everything published by First Comics, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I've bought all that stuff, but it was interesting reading about, since we were just talking about the new universe, to read about it and the behind the scenes stuff. And it was interesting reading Elliot Brown's take on it.
Yeah, you've seen his website, right?
Yes. Elliot Brown's got, because he also took pictures, and he's got essays and photos of, like, especially 80s Marvel and sometime into the 70s.
Yeah. And he did a lot of photo covers too for Marvel.
Yeah.
Or actually, I think he did all the photo, almost, if not all of them, almost all the photo covers for Marvel.
Elliot Brown had previously worked as an assistant editor to Tom DeFalco in the Spider Office. Okay. And for Louise Jones in the X Office. He then worked for Shooter, DeFalco, and Bob Budiansky's as special projects managing editor. Okay, that's what he did. He left that to take the task on editing 4 of the New Universe books, including Justice Incorporated, Kickers, Night Mask, and Starbrand. Several months after the initial production meeting at the Roosevelt, Jim Shooter called me into his office and asked me if I was interested in starting up a line as an editor, recalls Brown. How can you say no? Jim told me I needed to pick an assistant, and there was only one choice, Jack Morelli, one of my closest friends. I think he even says in this somewhere, he asked, like, Mark Grunwald if he could say no to that. And Mark went, I don't think you can say no to that. So they and it just goes on to, it's interesting them going on to create it on a shoot, and of course they couldn't get a lot of established creators because no one's given up the X-Men with proven royalties in order to work on a new universe book.
Right.
So it was good stuff, and they have some unpublished Star Brand pages, some John Romita Jr. ones because he strayed too far from Jim Shooter's plot. Oh, I think they also Elliot's got a little story about John Romita Jr. wasn't turning pages in on time. So Jim Shooter wanted him to fire John Romita Jr. Or said, because the book wasn't going out on time or something. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, the dreaded deadline doom. And
so this was at a time he was doing Daredevil. Romita Jr.
Was it before Daredevil?
No, it was at 86, 87. Might have been around that time.
Yeah, I don't remember. I wasn't buying his Daredevil, so I'm not 100% sure.
I think he may have dropped from the X-Men by then.
Mm-hmm. It says, as it was, Shooter got quite lucky with his own creation, Star Brand, and the art team that offered to help him launch the title, John Romita Jr. and Al Williamson, volunteered out of the blue to do Star Brand with me, giving up time that could have been spent doing better paying work just because they wanted to help me out, recalls Shooter. Yeah, it's not bad to help out the boss. I mean,
yeah,
just because they wanted to help me out. You were editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. It wasn't just because they wanted to help you out.
Yeah,
it amazes me how people with power sometimes are like, oh yeah, they were just being nice to me. No, they weren't.
But hey, at least Jim Shooter wrote scripts.
Yeah. Let's see. The only controversial thing I may have done, I think this is Elliot talking, was fight for Tony Salmons to work on Night Mask. I thought Tony was the quintessential dreamscape person because he is last best natural delineator of Ditko-esque world, aside from Steve himself. I think that first issue bared that out. I don't remember Night Mask at all. That Tony Salmons draw
was written by Keith Giffen, I think.
Written by who?
Keith Giffen.
Ah. Let's see. Night Mask.
But Tony Salmons couldn't hold a monthly.
No.
He had an interesting style. I'd say idiosyncratic. So I see what Elliot Brown means about him having doing the dreamscape scenario, but he couldn't do a monthly. He never could.
Here's this is Elliot Brown talking. I know at one point I was supposed to fire John Jr., and I could not bring myself to do it. Jim said, I want you to fire this guy. And he handed me the phone, and there was John Jr. This was in Jim's office, so this was doubly terrifying. I did something bad. I made it seem like I was reading John the Riot Act, but John was backing away from the deadline. He said, I'll bring them in Friday. I said, no, you bring them on a Thursday. And he said, no, on Friday. And I said, that's right. I was playing it up for the room. I did that because I knew Jim was going to be out of town that weekend. And I also believed the hype about the new universe. I knew if you started changing horses midstream, you're bound to have problems. It's one thing to get John Romita Jr. in a project. It's another thing to rip him off it in the middle of it. So he pretended to fire John Romita Jr., but he didn't really.
It kind of reminds me of the stories of anytime Jim Shooter would fire Ralph, and Ralph would just come back into the office like nothing happened. And then he said, and the reason why, according to the legend, is that by the time Jim saw him again, he would have completely forgotten that he fired him.
Yeah.
And it's like there was like apparently a couple of stories like that where Jim will make one decision And if you give him a little bit of time, he would forget the decision he made. And I don't recall who was editing Thor at the time, but he did not like one of the Walt Simonson's covers. And he ripped it to shreds. He was like, "The cover's not good." This back and forth with this cover. So I forget who was the editor of Thor. He basically said he walked away, came back a few days later, and said, "Here's the new cover
Yeah.
by Walt." And he's like, he looked at it and said, "Okay, this looks great. Let's go to print." And so I've heard a few
Yeah.
stories like that. So it's hard because unfortunately a lot of the stories that we hear about Jim are from the editors who stayed there, and they all had horror stories about him.
They did, but most of them were horrors. Like Ralph Macchio was not
Yeah.
a nice guy.
And that's the thing. It's like,
At least
okay,
it wasn't nice to me, particularly nice. He wasn't a terrible guy either, but he was never nice to me, and he would say bad things about people behind their backs all the time.
oh, the moment they walk out of the room,
Yeah,
he
they
has
wouldn't say it
something
to
to
anyone's
say.
face. So
Yeah. And I always wonder, it's like, I wonder what he says about me when I leave.
I figured he had nothing to say about me. He didn't care if I lived or died. Like I said, it took Ralph 10 years. No, pardon me, 15 years maybe to say hello to me. It wasn't until we moved to 40. I was there all through the 90s. And it wasn't until we were on 40th Street, which is what, 2002, 12 years later, that I'm just walking by him in the hall when he goes, "Hey, Jared, how you doing today?" I'm like, "Hey, Ralph, I'm doing pretty well." That was the first time he ever said hello to me. And I'm the kind of person who says hello to everyone. So I take everything Ralph says through that lens.
Right.
Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if I had ever become an editor at Marvel.
Yeah.
I would not have been a nice person.
Might not. Hello there, Comic Crack. Infinity says, back in 85, I was developing my own book, and 40 years later, I'm still working on that thing. Right, when no one's paying you monthly salary to develop it, it takes a lot longer.
20 years now I've been working on my own comic book and only ever published issue 1.
Yes,
When it's Marvel's money, things move differently.
Yes. If you've got a job, it depends on when you got a job there. And who you worked with. Because if, Mark Grunwald was your editor, I'm sure you'd be nice enough. Ralph Macchio was your editor? A few others, you'd be more on your own. But it says here, also, the creative shakeups on the book began even before the books were officially launched. In the case of Elliot Brown, he was dismissed from his position as an editor of the New Universe before the first issues of the books even went to press. Like, the books were taken away from me, recalls Brown. I thought I had quite a lot done compared to the other editors. There were 4 other titles, and none of them had their first issue done, whereas I had at least 3 of my 4 books done. The only one that wasn't done to any degree was Justice, which was the most troublesome. I thought I was doing pretty well, all things considered. When it came down for me to hand over all my stuff, I plopped down 99% of the finished books. Years later, I see there are some other complicated incidences in my checkered career on staff. Jim either didn't tell me or I misunderstood what I was doing. Nothing has come forth about the New Universe, and I do not know why I was dismissed from my editorial role. To this day, I do know I would have liked a couple more months on the schedule to learn how to crack heads and learn how to fire people, if that is what needs to be done, and grab somebody by the scruff and drag them through. But they just took them off.
How much
Brown
backstabbing
from the line? What was that?
How much backstabbing was there in the editorial offices between each editorial office?
When I was there, I don't think a lot because it was the boom times.
Mhm.
Like in the 90s, it was a boom time. So there was, well, Bob Harris would steal away your artist if he was good enough for the X-Men. But that makes perfect sense to everyone. The X-Men paid the most in royalty. So
Right.
there was backstabbing like that going on, but I think editors understood that.
Mhm.
There was not much. We'd have to ask somebody who worked in editorial really, because they would know more than I would. I saw stuff because when you were in the bullpen, you ever see those like TV shows like about British royalty, like a house where the aristocracy lives, and there's the aristocracy and the servants. Editorial was the aristocracy. Bullpen
Right.
and everyone else was the servants. So we weren't privy to all the stuff that was going on in the closed doors, but they would also say stuff in front of us because we were nothing to them.
Mhm.
So they'd say stuff they weren't really supposed to say in front of us because they thought nothing of us. We were just the help. So I don't think there was as far as I could tell. Well, it was so strange because I started in the boom years, where if there was any backstabbing going on, it was the poaching of artists and writers. Um, and then Image Comics started, and it was total panic mode because editors, those were the top guys. So the top editors had to figure out how to replace those guys, which of course probably trickled down to the other editors who probably got their guys poached again. And then came the bankruptcy years where you just didn't know what was happening, where I don't think there was much backstabbing going on amongst editorial because all the backstabbing was going on amongst the vice presidents.
Mhm. Yeah, just keep your head down, because if you
Right.
start
Just keep
backstabbing,
your head down
people
and
notice you.
right. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down, kind of thing. But
You know that in the 70s you hear about how the writers were, since the writers were editing their own stuff, and then
right.
they were in constant warfare with each other. And I wonder if there was any certain period where after the editors couldn't write anymore, or couldn't write their own stuff, at least if there was some sort of trying to sabotage the other editor, if you thought you could if you could do it for clout with the boss.
Right. I think there was stuff going on like what is it?
You,
Downton
you
Abbey,
remember
I would think.
you remember Tom DeFalco making fun of Christopher Priest in a character in Thor?
I don't remember that. He was
There was a character. It was there was a character. His name was something like there was a character of Jim Owsley
okay.
in a Crazy magazine, but that was different because they did it right to his face. But then when Tom DeFalco was writing Thor, there was this guy. There was this guy who was clearly a stand-in for for Jim Owsley,
Uh-huh.
and he was some sort of prima donna. He was a throwaway character. He appeared like in an issue and a half.
Right.
I think he was supposed to be Eric Masterson's boss or something on a construction project, because Eric Masterson was who became Thor, got merged with Thor. He was an architect, uh, and there was an issue where this guy shows up. He also has a name that kind of sounds like Jim Owsley,
Right.
but it was Tom DeFalco making fun of him.
Huh. I can believe that. But I think I've talked about this before. I was just going to say too that I think they're like a lot of editors were annoyed with like Tom DeFalco when he was editor in chief, And I always thought it kind of had to do with Tom DeFalco, but I later began to thought it had to do with the job of editor-in-chief because after Tom DeFalco quit, the next editor-in-chief was oh my God, the X-Men guy just flew out of my head.
Bob Harris.
What was that?
Well, it was the 5 editors-in-chief.
Oh yes,
We
I
had
forgot about
that,
him.
and then who was left from that? I mean, they were all still there.
Yeah, it
But
was Bob Harris.
Bob ended up being. So I don't know if because they split the titles to be like their
Right,
own little. There were group editors.
right.
We
5
had
group
5
editors.
editor-in-chiefs, but they only really were controlling their little group.
That didn't last particularly long. I don't remember
No,
how long.
not too long.
Maybe a year?
Possibly.
Not even
Possibly
that,
a
I
year.
think.
Yeah, because then at the end, Bob became editor-in-chief, and it
Right.
was like, were they all up for it? And it took a year for whoever made the final decision to go, all right, Bob is the one that's running
Right.
everything the best way, so make him editor-in-chief.
But
That's the
I
way it seemed.
yeah, but I had forgot about the group editors. But like when I always considered Bob a kind of level-headed guy when he was running the X-Men office. But when he got to be editor-in-chief, like I said, I think it goes with all of a sudden other editors started complaining about him a lot. How he'd keep changing his mind and I think the same stuff they said about Tom DeFalco. And I think it was because of the job. It was because all of a sudden when you're in charge of the whole Marvel line and you have final decision on everything, you have to have final decision on everything.
Right.
Should Spider-Man and there's so much stuff that's just a judgment call. Should Spider-Man wear green pants this month? The editor-in-chief. So I think because and I started hearing people complain about Bob that he couldn't make up his mind, and I think it came with the job. Because half the decisions were whimsical. It was stuff where, like I said, should Spider-Man grow 4 extra legs this month? Well, I got to make the decision for Spider-Man, the Hulk, the X-Men, and the Avengers, and everything. And it's just, and I don't know how much backstabbing or whatever went on, but I just heard a lot of people complain about Bob Harris and his inability to make decisions. Same as I heard with Tom DeFalco, but it was all small stuff. It was all they needed a decision made on this comic so they could move forward with it. But they wouldn't make that because they have other things in their day, kind of thing. And they have like 5 minutes to make that decision. And they might make that decision. And then the next day, they may think the better of it, or someone else may ask them about it, and they may change their mind. So there was a lot of going. I don't know how much backstabbing revolved around that or anything, but I did notice that's when I said, oh, they're making the same complaints about Bob that they made about Tom. It's like now I think it's the job. I don't think it's the person.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're editing a book, you can pretend you're doing it for artistic reasons.
Right.
If you're the editor-in-chief, you have sales charts.
Yeah.
And then you have a publisher who you have to explain to why does this book sell more than the other one, and why can't the other one sell more than it is selling?
And there are no answers to those questions.
Right.
Often.
Right.
Green logos.
Yeah, if you're an editor trying to do art, get ready to have your art shattered because it has to go. If it's not selling, it has to go in a different direction right now.
Yeah.
I suppose you have to be realistic about it, and when you have about 2 or 3 generations of guys who got into comics because they were fans.
Right.
Sometimes you go in there and you don't have that grasp on reality that you should have when you have a job.
And I always say there was more pressure on the editors to get the book done than to make the book good.
Right.
So quite often they had to get the book done. And if that meant a dip in quality, that meant a dip in quality. But that's where the real pressure was, to get the book out the door on time.
Yeah, sometimes done is a lot better than perfect.
Yeah.
And
Which is why
yeah,
it took them so, it took like prestige books. Like the example I always give is that first Punisher miniseries, which could have been an evergreen for Marvel, except the pressure was on to get it done rather than make it good. So the last issue of the miniseries is done by a completely different creative team, making it useless as a trade paperback. But
It's not
they
actually useless
learned
as a
with
trade
the
paperback.
industry learned with stuff like The Watchmen or even Camelot 3000 over at DC that it's better to, especially for miniseries.
Right, but DC had an outlet for evergreens, which was Warner Books.
Right.
Because you'll remember that the first DC trade paperbacks from the 80s
That's
are
why
not
they
published by
learned
DC.
first.
They're by, right. Marvel didn't have that.
No.
They never thought about reprinting.
And Marvel's philosophy well into the late 90s
Right.
was trade paperbacks would cannibalize the sales of the monthly comics.
Yeah, well, that was one of the ongoing arguments on the
Right.
news groups.
Yeah.
Why can't Marvel have a decent graphic novel department or a graphic novel policy? Because there wasn't any. I remember we used to bother Tom Brevoort a lot.
Yeah.
And because he was very active, so we would all pile on him. We want a trade paperback of the Kree Skrull War, because the
Right.
Avengers compared to the
The new
X-Men.
one just came out, a hardcover.
But at the time, if there were trade paperbacks, they were X-Men or Spider-Man, and the odd crossover event. And even then, those trade paperbacks was, hey, let's collect this for whatever reason. Avengers didn't have the trade paperbacks, but there were Avengers fans who kind of wanted the same treatment. And
I
then
was
there
just
was
looking over there to see where if my Kree Skrull War trade paperback was there, but I didn't see it. To see what year it came out.
About 2001, I think. But then I used to read all the previews, and a lot of people did that, of course. But I read, and then there's one month, and Marvel is going to put out X-Men Road Trip, the best stories about the X characters going on the road. What the? Who thought this was a good idea? Who is this for? And it made no sense. There was no connecting storyline. It's not even a best of collection. And then that's when we all of the Avengers fans got PC, because wait, you're not putting out an Avengers event story that is a classic story with Neil Adams art, and you're putting out X-Men Road Trip. What?
Yeah, in the late 90s, the trade paperback, the collected editions department was one person, Polly Watson. That was it. She was the editor in charge of all that stuff. And sometimes stuff would be released because some foreign company licensed it and put it together. And Marvel went, we may as well release it here. The one that I remember from that was the Steranko Nick Fury came out for that reason. Because maybe it was Panini who put it together. I forget who. And Marvel went, all right, we have the whole thing together now. We must release it ourselves, with the terrible coloring on it too.
Yeah.
Rumor was that Jim Steranko wouldn't sign that trade paperback because they wrecked the coloring on it. Let's see. Tit Goblin's here. Backstabbing makes drama, and drama makes it interesting. Jared Wilson told me he doesn't like you. And he's taking your next job. Paulo, Jared said you're getting booted off the show next week.
Well, that's okay because I'll just join EVS's show and talk shit about you.
Wow, I haven't checked in with EVS in a long time. Is he still
Me
making
neither.
videos?
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder how his Kickstarters are going. He was making bank with those Kickstarters.
Yeah, but releasing the books, from what people keep complaining, releasing the books would actually be a good idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to check in with him every now and then, but it's been years.
I think I saw one video about 3 months ago, and probably nothing for the 6 previous months. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So this whole new universe little article was pretty interesting. And I think they said by the time they were done, they were down to just 4 books, and there was no support for them anymore, so they just canceled them. It's like there's like the ones that were left weren't selling terribly, but
no, the first
Shooter was gone by then, and it was
the first 12 issues were still had newsstand editions.
Yeah,
of all of them. The 4 remaining books after issue number 12 were direct market only.
Yeah, here's Howard Mackey talking now, because I think Howard was replacing Elliot as the editor. The writing had been on the wall, says Mackey, about the cancellation of the New Universe books. The sales had been going down, and it is interesting because by comparison with comic book sales today, the New Universe, when it ended, would have been considered a very successful line to continue with. Right up until the last issue, DP7 had respectable sales numbers, says Paul Ryan, the artist. The New Universe was finally put to rest because it lacked editorial support. Without Jim Shooter, there was no one in a position of power to keep it going. Yes, 4 of the 8 original titles were dropped, but that didn't mean new titles and characters couldn't have been added to the New Universe lineup.
Well, with Mark Grunwald writing one of the books, it would have survived as long as it could. And
that was DP7, right?
Right, right. But of course, DP7 itself would not have held on. So as long as they had that a little bit of a line, because most of the writers were also editors at other books at Marvel, something to keep them happy as long as they weren't losing too much money.
And I think the DP7 had the same creative team right up to the end, right?
Mark Grunwald and Paul Ryan.
Yeah. Oh, and I think they also mention.
I suspect that when John Byrne came back to Marvel, he probably asked to do Star Brand just so he could blow up Pittsburgh.
They addressed that here. First of all, he only came back because who was it? It was a friend of his. Was it Howard Mackey?
Maybe.
Let me see. Because I think it was maybe Howard Mackey said.
Or was it Ralph?
Yeah, it was Mackey. I approached different creators, and one of them was John Byrne, recalls Mackey. That was honestly one of the most absurd phone calls I had ever make. To think John Byrne would want to write Starbrand was ridiculous. I started off by saying, I guess you heard I got a promotion. And he said, so you called me to do a New Universe book? I said, you don't have to give me an answer now, but if you happen to think of any Starbrand stories, let me know. And I hung up. About an hour and a half later, John called me up and cursed me out. And it turned out that he did have some stories in mind. I got John Byrne involved with the New Universe. All I needed was to plant the seed, leave it in a dark room somewhere, and let it sprout. It helped to find. It was quite a coup for me to get him not only back to Marvel, but back to Marvel doing a very low, very, very low profile but a
I'll
lot
do
of
it
it
for
had to do with
free
the fact.
as a revenge. As revenge.
No, I had a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had a personal relationship with John, so he was doing this particularly as a favor to me. But we also had quite a bit of freedom. We could do what we couldn't. And he's over here. He says he actually addresses that thing with Jim Shooter. Okay, this is Howard Mackey. It is a subject. The new direction with Starbrand and the departure of Connell, who represented Shooter's most personal comics work, raises a dark question that has always surrounded the radical new direction that the new universe took. It is a subject that Mackey is quick to address and put to rest. I know a lot has been read into the changes we made, that they were attempts by us to take swipes at Jim Shooter, says Mackey. That really was not my intent. We made sure that anything we did was developed out of what had been previously established with the characters. Pittsburgh was where Jim chose to set the character of Ken Connell, and that was part of the new universe. In terms of blowing up Pittsburgh, it was really determined by the way Jim chose to establish the character in that town. We were really trying to stick with Jim's original premise that everything had to have a real world ramification. I can't speak for John Byrne, but I really had no issues with Jim. Jim hired me, he gave me my promotion, and quite frankly, still to this day, I find myself when I'm writing or editing comic books thinking of things I learned from him. I think he did take a hell of a lot for Marvel, and the last thing in my mind was to try and take a swipe at him. There's really no reason, quite frankly. So we don't know about John Byrne, but Howard Mackey wasn't taking any swipes at Jim Shooter in that
Oh,
new.
we know.
They just blew up
We know.
Pittsburgh because they wanted to blow up a city because
Yeah,
things had ramifications, and that was where the story was set.
yeah, but John Byrne did it on purpose.
Uh,
John Byrne is one of the guys who has the biggest bone to pick with Jim Shooter. It's him
yep.
and Tony Isabella. And so yeah, I think Shooter did it on purpose. I remember Shooter addressing it on his blog. Am I upset? Well, no. I mean,
Didn't
no.
I
It's
see
like
news that Tony Isabella transitioned this week?
I think
Was that him?
is it,
He's going by a woman's name. I think that was Tony Isabella.
I thought it was supposed to be a joke.
I don't know.
That's too crazy even for him.
Could happen to anyone, I guess. You could all of a sudden go, "Oh, been living a lie my whole life. I'm really not Portuguese.
Yeah,
I'm from the Bronx."
I am not from the Bronx. I could never fake it being from the Bronx.
You're not strong enough, man. It's not easy.
Yeah, but it was nice. It was
Providence,
nice to
Rhode
read
Island,
that
on the
new
other hand.
universe thing after we were talking about it, and it also had a little. I read a little article about Jim Shooter's first day at Marvel. That was okay too. So I'll give you whatever news I find in this 2009 back issue I'm reading. The back issue now. I want to see if Wilson got this comic this week. I picked up Godzilla Heist #1.
I didn't see that anywhere.
Aha.
The only new Godzilla book they had was a reprint of the first issue of when IDW printed their very first Godzilla book, and they reprinted it with a foil cover. And it was like that was the only Godzilla stuff. So no, I did not get that. You're out Godzilla me.
The Godzilla fan. Wow. And this is by story by Van Jensen, art by Kelsey Ramsey, colors by Heather Breckel, letters and design by Sandy Tanaka. And it's got sort of a gritty artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you some. Let me show you the little big. There's some Godzilla shots for you. And I picked this up because I'm a fan of heist movies. There's not a lot of heist comics out there. Thief of Thieves is the best one I can think of. But I've just always liked heist movies. So I was like, I'll give this one a try, just to Godzilla heist. Um and it pretty much follows a pretty intriguing sort of typical heist movie plot in that we start out with a guy who's pulling a heist. And his heist is contingent on luring Godzilla into the city and luring Godzilla with these drones into blowing up this vault in a building. To which the guy almost died. He's like, wow, I'm still alive. It worked. So then our guy who pulled the heist gets kidnapped by this gang of thieves who wants to pull their own heist. And they're like, you can make Godzilla show up? And he's like, yeah. He used to be a meteorologist or something. He has some way of that has got a high chance of getting. So then they get him involved in planning their own heist, an even bigger heist. And that's how heist movies always work. You see someone pulling off a smaller, though how small is the heist really when Godzilla's involved? Wrecking a city. So then he gets involved with, they're making him help them pull off an even bigger heist. And then it ends with you, the reader, wondering if this was the original guy's plan all along or not. So I really enjoyed it. It was a fun heist comic. So I'm going to, I'll stick with it. I don't know how many issues it's running. Like I said, it's got kind of gritty indie artist looking stuff. Oh, I'm going to show you this just because I like this Mothra cover. I showed it last week. I'll show it again this week. I don't know if I pre-ordered it just for the cover or not, but so I have it in other books. I did not. Did you order any of this Godzilla versus Chicago stuff?
No, I tend to just pick up the Godzilla books off the shelves
Okay.
because most of them, as I mentioned, would be like 4-issue series.
Right.
And since I don't get like a final cutoff type thing from
Right.
Midtown, I like just taking it off the shelf.
Yeah.
But I didn't
But
see
if they
that
don't
at
have
all.
them, you're in
But if they don't
trouble.
have them, or maybe they sold out, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like
But like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because it was a good heist comic with some Godzilla thrown. I like how IDW is like, if you can come up with any kind of Godzilla story, they're like, all right. As they, Monster Piece Theater, Godzilla with Great Gatsby, and a Godzilla heist story. There's all sorts of like weird Godzilla stories where he's not even really the star of the book. He's just sort of a force of nature in the book. The
right.
story is about all the people around Godzilla. But I also have to point out this new IDW logo, which our friend Randy, former letterer Randy Gentile, who I now I teach with, pointed out. He's like, "Oh, this logo it's terrible. I couldn't even see the W in this logo." Let me show you. Where is it?
The IUD logo?
Yes. The W is this bottom part. Like that line.
Oh, okay,
See?
okay. The upside down E. If you
Yes,
turn
the
it to the
upside down
side, it looks
E.
like a luchadora.
It's just such a terrible logo. It doesn't say IDW at all. It says
No.
like ID or it's their old one, which was just like 3 letters in Helvetica, looked better than this one. It looks like UD or ID or something. Or LD. I don't know.
It looks
It
like a
definitely doesn't look like
UD.
IDW.
Looks like a U and a D to me.
It's very strange. It's very. Want to show us a book you got, Wilson?
Sure. So one of the books that I picked up, that was on my pull list is GI Joe issue number 4.
Uh-huh.
And to be honest with you, it's been so long since I read an issue. Um, I have no. I kind of was surprised to have it in my pull list. It's like, oh, I decided on GI Joe. I was
Did
like,
you read
okay.
issues 1, 2, or 3 or not?
I don't think I did. And it was funny because the comic book shop, the guys were lamenting about working in comics, working in a comic book shop, and I guess they were comparing themselves to the other shops.
Uh-huh.
And so just overhearing how they were talking about, I guess it was like that one coworker that everyone has. It's like, why are you working here, kind of a thing. Complaining about how he's the person that reads the comics but retains nothing of it. So you can't really have a conversation with him about comics. And I'm standing
Uh-huh.
there picking up books, and it's like I can't say anything because I buy the books, I don't read them.
Let's see. Tit Goblin is saying, I'm still trying to figure out why the Merc book from the new universe is so crazy. There must be some backstory. It was satire or hate written. There's something going on with that universe. Let me see. I think they barely mentioned Merc in this.
I barely
Um,
remember Merc. I know I picked up the books, and I guess it
Mark
was
Hazard, Merc. Let's see who did that one. TP7, Justice, Mark Hazard, Merc. 12 issues in an annual. Doesn't give us, where's it down here? Mark Hazard, Merc, a soldier of 4. Tell us who did it. Kickers Incorporated. And they realized it was a problem losing half the creators with the second issue. I'm like, yeah, I remember that too. They just show the pencils of a cover for Merc. Well, they really don't get into how crazy Merc was. But I got another nostalgia card. This one a little sad. If you remember this one I got of this actress from Clerks,
right.
which I bought purely for early 90s nostalgia. For even cheaper, I got this one once again from Clerks, Lisa Spoonhour. She was one of the actresses in Clerk, autographed card. This I think cost $8. The other one cost like 15. But this one is even more sad in that this actress I think died a few years ago. So she's not even around to autograph Big Choice Video Clerks trading cards. So I was like, oh, I gotta I gotta get another pure nostalgia reminding us all of the fragility of life card. So now I've got 2 of the actresses from Clerks. And I'm not even an autograph guy, but for those 2, I am. For those 2 cards, I'm an autograph guy.
I also usually say I'm not an autograph guy, but I do have a few, and they
Right.
were all just moments of convenience.
Ah,
In the sense of my very first autograph was at the San Diego Comic Con, and it was of Adam West. And it was only because we were walking around the con, and Adam had no line in front of him.
yep,
He usually always has a line. But this particular year, Julie Newmar and one other actor who don't normally does cons at that time, this is in
right.
96 or so, who normally doesn't do cons, was at a con. So all the lines were with them. So Adam West had nobody there. So we were like, do you want to talk to Adam West? You know, it was the moment of opportunity. So we went and just had a polite conversation and ended up picking up a photo and his autograph, I think for $20 at
Uh-huh.
that time. And it was just a fun thing to do. So once I got that, Not too long later, I ended up getting Lou Ferrigno's autograph because he was
Mhm.
literally on the table next to us when we were displaying at one of the other again, San Diego Comic Con. So it became one of those things like, all right, maybe I'll just, if I'm going to collect autographs, there'll be superheroes of the 70s kind of a thing, just for the fun of it.
One of the social skills I learned at Marvel was if you happen to be holding a comic book and the creator is right near you and they say, "Oh, do you want me to sign that for you?" You immediately go, "Sure, that would be nice," and don't look at them with a confused look on your face. Because that's what, because like I never really thought, and so like it happened a couple of times. Somebody's like, "You want me to sign that?" I'd be like, "What?"
Why?
Uh-huh. I don't learn to go, "Oh yeah, sure, thank you." So I have a few signatures, I think, when that happened, but I can still remember like that. I literally would, because like I said, I don't usually think of autographs, so I would actually look at them with a confused look on my face, like I was from Mars or something. Here, want me to sign that for you? Why?
Why? Why mess with the book? It won't be in mint condition anymore.
You wanna put ink all over my nice book? What?
I haven't even read it yet. I don't know if I like it. What if I don't like it? And now I got to see your signature all the time.
Nope. You go, thank you very much. Then you hand it to him. I said, let that be a social lesson to all you comic book fans out there. That ever happens to you. Probably doesn't
Why
happen
not?
to a lot of people.
And it's funny because it's I went through some older books and I'm flipping through some stuff and not realize, some things will get mixed up with other things. And I found a set of books that were signed, but not on the cover.
Hmm.
The early 90s, the you would give a book to someone, they normally would turn it and then sign it on the bottom right under the indicia.
Yeah, yeah, that was the
And
standard place
that
to
was the
sign a
standard
comic.
for a while. And it's funny how like sometimes you may not realize that
Yeah.
that book may be signed. And I've seen a few YouTube videos where someone's like, I bought a collection of stuff, and as I was putting it away, I opened up the book and someone wrote it.
Jack Kirby's signature.
Or it's like, or you would have people would post on Facebook, whose signature is this?
Yeah.
Because some
That,
people
their
can't
signatures
read.
at scribble.
Yeah, complete scribble. And then there's been enough of them that I've saw. It's like, oh, that's Chris Claremount's. You
Yeah.
can't read his. You can recognize it, but you can't read his. And it's
Not
kind of funny
everybody's
how
Jim
there's stuff like
Steranko.
that. Uh huh.
Who's got a nice, fancy signature. Good evening, sleepy reader.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, comic book minions. Let's see, what else did I get this week? Here's a first issue I picked up. This is I got 5 comics off my pull list, and this is the one I pulled off the shelf. And it's a Let This One Be a Devil, a true weird story. And I think this is about the Jersey Devil.
Oh, okay. Did that have alternate covers?
It must have. It's
Yeah,
got a
because I think I.
nice, it was a $5 comic, but it's got a nice, thick, slick cover, unlike a lot of Dark Horse. And I think that's the Jersey Devil.
That looks like the Jersey Devil. Not the
Uh,
one I ran into, but the one that I've heard about.
and it's by James Tinian, right? That's one of the reasons I picked. Script by James Tinian and Steve Fox with an E. Art by Peter Kowalski, Piotr. So that ain't the English Peter. Colors by Brad Simpson. Letters by Tom Napolitano. Yeah, cover A by Gavin Fullerton. Cover B by Peter Kowalski with Brad Simpson. And cover C by Mac Fiumara.
Yeah, so I saw that on the shelf, one of the other covers, and I was tempted to pick it up.
This is cover A, so it's Gavin Fullerton. Some little people. I think it's a little too dark, this cover. The design doesn't work for me.
Yeah, it seems like 3 different images put together.
Yeah, yeah. We got the Jersey Devil up there. Where we've got the house. You know what it is? It's I think it's three. Like that has its own horizon line. That they have their own horizon line, and the house has its own horizon line.
Well, you can make the figures in the house match up. The Jersey Devil doesn't.
Yeah, there's just a little too much darkness in the middle too.
Right. Is that supposed to be the woods?
Yeah, that's supposed to be the woods.
Right, and then but everything.
I just think that it didn't stop me from buying it, but I think the cover's a little bit of a swing and a miss. But
if we had to put that in a newsstand, it wouldn't have worked.
At least the logo jumps out at you. You get a big devil logo.
Yeah.
But it takes place in January 1909, and then we flash back to 1735. And the title comes from "Let This One Be a Devil." This woman is giving birth to her 12th baby, and it's having a hard time coming out. And that's what she says. She says, "Let this one be the devil." And I think that's the birth of the Jersey Devil. And then there's a little backup story, even a little backup ghost story.
That sounds vaguely familiar to the lore.
Yeah, I don't really know the Jersey Devil lore, but I think I'm going to buy more of this. Oh, look, there's a description of next issue. At the scene of the unholy birth in 1735, the Leeds family confronts the demonic monster in their midst. And in the early 1900s, Henry Naughton continues to hunt for answers about the mysterious creature he encountered on the farm and discovers the terrible connection between it and the Leeds family in the past. Okay. Like I said, I enjoyed it. So I think I'll buy some more of this. Don't know how many issues it's go. There we go. It's a James Tinian, so it's Tiny Onion. But that a pretty good issue. A pretty good first issue. Have you gotten to read any comics lately, Paolo?
Not this week.
Not this week.
I did try. No, wait. I did try New Gods.
Okay.
Because it's being written by Ram V, and he's doing a good job of trying to incorporate several mythologies when mentioning the third world of the gods, which was the one that was destroyed, and the people who destroyed the old world of the gods are coming back. So that's kind of gonna be the plot, because there's an antichrist-like figure that Highfather sent Orion to kill, and Orion doesn't want to, so he sent Mr. Miracle to find and protect the child.
Saul is back. Hello, everyone. Long time no see. Good to see you back. Let's see. It's Tinian, so I wait for the trade paperback now. His in-between time wears me out in reading singles. Yeah, I can understand that, but I'm okay with waiting. So Saul says, yes, I'm reading New Gods. It's great. Okay. So you got someone reading New Gods with you.
Mm-hmm.
Tit Goblin says, I find it an odd feeling to get an art and craft work signed by friends after years of knowing them and having done work with them. Yeah. Once you get to know each other, why need a signature after the fact? I understand that too. It's always weird to go, could you sign this to one of your friends? They're like, all right. The art in New Gods is also outstanding. Okay. Who's doing the art for it? Do you know?
I don't remember the name, but the guy's good.
Okay.
It didn't look like much on issue number 1, But now on number 3, it's really starting to pop out. It's gonna be a
Okay.
good. It makes for a very good ride.
And I have to show Tit Goblin. I got my promotional Copic marker in the mail. I got R20 blush, which is a color I have already. I think I have like maybe a third of all the Copic markers. So there was a 1 in 3 chance that I'd get a marker that I already had. But I refill my markers so I don't buy them over new. But I checked this is my old Copic, and you can see that white there. That's because though the marker's still running, what happens to Copic markers is the seal, when you put the cap back on, starts to go. So when that happens, I wrap some silicone plumber's tape around the cap, and that can help make an airtight seal again. It doesn't work 100% of the times. I got a few it hasn't worked on, but this one it's worked on fine. So, but I'm putting this in my backup collection since I have this one to replace it. I have a backup collection of markers that I repaired.
Yeah, I saw you post that up, and I was gonna say that's a pretty good color. I use that one a
Yeah,
lot, especially
this was
for
this was
this
a solid color. I
yeah,
think
so it's a good
Tit
one.
Goblin got what one he got. I can't remember if it was BV00. He got a light purple that I'm not a huge fan of. I can't remember which one it was though. Boy, though I sampled it. Let's see, because I went. There's mine sampled. You can see that red, and that was the one. This light purple is the one Tit Goblin got. He messaged me. Um, so I just wanted to see was it BV00? Let's see now. I'm gonna have to swatch this again. Yeah, that was the one he got, I think. BVZ, which is a very light purple. I use it sometimes, but it's not one of my. I use probably R20 more. Let's see. I was hoping you would get one you could replace if it wasn't a new color. Let's see here. New Gods artists Riccardo Federici and Evan Cagle on this issue. I'm not sure if anyone is a Ram V fan. He has ups and downs, his Batman being a bit of a letdown, in my humble opinion. I read
I don't.
Van V's indie stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think Rem V is appropriate if the character does mundane stuff.
Yeah.
And while you can try to do a gothic story with Batman, it's still mundane because Rem V is good if he has mythology and mysticism to work with.
Huh. Peter David and Gray Morrow on Mark Hazard. Whoa.
Well, Gray Morrow at the time was how old?
It's at my sister's house in DC. I'll get to use it when the war is over. Everyone seems to like Ram V's indie stuff better. Since I like indie stuff in general, I probably would too. I have to put in a big art supply order to Dick Blick soon. My paper is running low.
I have to do an inventory of my own stuff because I was doing those sketch cards, and luckily I finished them, but my ink was running low on the pens, and it's like I like
Wow.
using those Fiber Castle pens, and then realized I know that some people have refilled them, but I have no idea what ink they might be using. Like there are a few types of pens that they're not made to be refillable, but
Right, but you can.
you could take them apart and do some stuff. Like I know Walden Wong had on his YouTube channel had made suggestions on how to
I've,
refill some of those pens.
I've showed how to refill like black markers, and to refill the black markers, I always use Ultra Draw, which is a rapidograph ink. You can just see Rapidograph up there because
Right.
Rapidograph ink is made to go into Rapidograph pens and has a bit of glycerin in the ink, which is a surface tension breaker. So it helps the ink flow through pens. And usually all I do is I pop off the back and take the sponge out and then put about 10 drops of that ink in the sponge. And it keeps this pen going. I've also got, where's this one? Where'd it go? Oh, I've got these two. There are also these, you can buy Copic markers that are empty and fill them with your own ink. And
Right.
I have one of them that I filled with this Rapidograph ink, and it works real well. Then I have these two. Let me see if I can find the bottles of ink over here.
Yeah, I usually use Rapidograph ink, and there was a time where I would mix my own ink, where I would use FW as a base, and then mix it with a little Pelican ink, and I think Rapidograph ink, just to get a smoother black that I enjoyed. But FW I used to find was great right out of the bottle. But this bottle I've had for so long and refilled it so long, I went to open it yesterday, and I haven't used it in a couple of weeks, if not a few months, and it's like the little bit of ink that's in here basically is just a solid.
Ah. Oh, that one's got some black on it. Okay, so let's see, that one's blue. Oh, this one's really light. So here's a brand of ink that I've tried. Holbein, I've heard of them before. They make paints, but this ink specifically says you can refill markers with it. Holbein's acrylic ink is a water-based acrylic paint. Where does it say? Mix well before use. Pearl colors cannot be used in refillable mark. So you can use this ink in refillable markers. This Holbein ink. And I've used it in some of, and they even have a little ball in them to shake it up.
Oh,
You
okay.
have to shake them well. See, does this one have a little ball in it? Yeah. And whoops, are these the Faber-Castell ones you use?
Yes, that looks like the logo. Yes.
Because these are, yeah, I think you'd want to refill these with these because these are, what are they? They're not dye based. They're pigment based. And pigment based markers last a longer time. And acrylic inks have pigment in them. Like these Copic markers are dye based, so the color won't last as long as this color will.
The two that I like using are the Prismacolors.
Okay.
And then for the brush one, I really do like using Faber-Castells. They look like this.
Okay, so that one's different than these Faber-Castell.
We used Faber-Castell in elementary school.
These kind are great because of the brush tips.
Yeah.
And I like using them for sketch cards. Not necessarily if I'm doing like a big picture that's going to be inked, then I use a brush.
Right. And you can't use the black marker from a set that you're coloring with, like if you're using a Copic set, you can't use the black marker from the Copic set with Copic markers because the markers will pick up the black.
Yeah.
So you have to use India ink.
I prefer to use India ink for it. And I find what's funny is like I like the black that we get from the Faber-Castell compared to the black for the Prismacolors, because the Prismacolors, the brush for that has kind of like a dull, chalky look to it at the end, where the Fiber Castle gives me a nice sharp black.
This is my black filled in with that
Oh, okay.
rapidograph ink, and it's really dark. It does a nice job. And since it's India ink, you can use it with the other Copic marker. So you could ink it with this one and then use the other ones over it, and the black won't bleed into it.
Okay. So yeah, that's what I'll do. I mean, I usually do have rapidograph inks because I even think I still have some of my rapidographs from high school.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I enjoyed using those for years. So I have to check. Like I said, I have to do an inventory, check my inks because again, when I opened up this bottle, it's like okay, it might be empty, and I go to look, it's like no, it's just it dried up in the bottle. But
I
I've reused this bottle for at least 10 years, if not more.
I I put all my FW inks in these little cubbies
Oh, okay.
because I find them easier to use since I can just dip and roll the brush around the edge of the cubby. Um, because I hate those ink I hate ink bottles like this, which is now my rapidograph holder with a old kneaded eraser down the bottom. So I stick it into the kneaded eraser, the point. So that's how I use an old ink bottle. I always put my ink in one of these glass bottles that's got a wide top so I can see the ink.
Right.
Because the problem with those bottles is I can't see the ink down the neck when I'm dipping. So my colored ink goes in the cubbies. When I was developing my colored ink technique about 3 years ago, I bought a whole bunch of them.
Oh, nice.
Let's see, what does Saul say here? Since you dudes use papers and pens, do you have any opinions on digital art tools? Using touchscreens or pressure sensitive digital pens, or do you consider those tools work of the devil? I prefer regular, in real life tools, but like I was just drawing digitally this morning. Let me see. I was doing some more of I have to watercolor these. Like I said, I'm going to watercolor these now, but these are the superhero cartoon art cards I was making. And I actually drew these on my iPad and then printed them out in blue line and inked them with ink and a brush. And these in particularly, I like drawing on the iPad because it's something like usually I'm faster on paper and pencil. But these are kind of just faces. And on something like the iPad, I can turn on mirroring. Because one of the things that takes longest about drawing a face is making sure the left side matches the right side. That's what drawing is a lot of times, is making sure you drew the left eye at the same height and in the same way you drew the right eye. But with mirroring on an iPad, I just draw half the face and it just mirrors it automatically. Like it does the drawing along with me. So that's why I've been doing these on the iPad, just because it saves me so much time. But then I finish them. Like these are going to be colored with watercolor, and it's ink. It's redrawn in black ink. So I have digital mixed in with my traditional stuff a lot. So I like digital, but like something like this I've been doing lately. Whoops. I've been showing off on my weekly hauls. This is one of my prints. And all the drawing and all the black line is done physically. Let's see, where is it? Here's one. This is the original ink drawing, and then all the coloring was done in Adobe Illustrator. So this one isn't finished until there's a printout made. So I like to mix both of them. Whoops. I smashed my speaker. Someone say something to see if I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, I can hear you again. Looks like Chris is here.
Hey, 49%.
Hey, Chris.
How are you doing,
guys?
I told you we should have gone to Vegas.
Should have gone to Vegas.
Should have gone to Vegas.
Now look at you.
Yeah.
Sleepy says, why do people named Richard always use Dick if they start a business? I refilled my fiber cast with Universal Rapidograph India. Yeah. Same one as you, Jay. Yeah, that's the good one. Tit Goblin says, I found neon green pearlescent ink from Dale Rowney on sale for $3 yesterday locally. Buying art supplies is my happy place. It sure is. I like the feel of analog tools and buying them in person socially. Yeah, there's just not many art stores left near me, so I buy them online. Eric P., good evening.
Yeah, like you, I'm the same way where, I do have a lot of traditional stuff, and then I usually end it digitally. So, most of my day work is digital because for the lettering, coloring that I do, and the production stuff, that's all digital.
Right.
When I'm doing, physical artwork, depending on what it is, I prefer to pencil and ink it traditionally. Especially if I'm the one that has to do the actual drawing of it. Like if there's something I need to pencil and someone else is going to ink it, then I don't have to worry too much about it. My brother can ink with using Illustrator, which blows my mind because it's Illustrator and not Photoshop. But
yeah, that's
he
interesting.
can do it that way, and he's done a couple of my covers. So I kind of like that because one, it takes one of the burdens off of me because I don't like to pencil and ink my own stuff. So if I'm penciling it, I'd rather have someone else ink it, and then I could color or letter or what have you. But I don't like doing that, like both disciplines at the same time if I don't have to. It's just one of those quirks that I have. Because it's like I'm pretty good with inking. I'm okay with penciling, but doing them both is sometimes like, ugh.
Yeah, Affinity says, I like to buy art pads and ink pens online, but for Wacom pads and computers, I like to go in the store in person. Well, you usually know what you're getting with art pads and ink pens. You usually buy the same ones over and over. Though I do love to try out new stuff and just have them send them to me. But
what's the big advantage of being a journalist in the automotive scene? I never had to buy a notepad or a pen.
Tit Goblin says, Wilson, are there any mom and pop art and stationery stores in NYC left? Even Pearl Paint is gone.
Pearl Paint is gone. I have not gone shopping for a while. There was a place on Bond that I liked that became a Dick Blick's.
There's Dick Blick. That's not a mom. Yeah, there's a Dick Blick near 14th Street. I think it's over on like 5th, maybe 6th Avenue and like 18th Street or something. There's a Dick Blick. That's expensive. Midtown Manhattan art store. Whew.
Yeah, there was a
Utrecht. That's the one I couldn't think of the name of. That's another big one.
That one's in the Village.
That's still there, again, I think.
I have not been there for years, so I don't know if they're still there.
I know the brand is still alive.
Yeah.
And I've
So
seen social media from them, so I think
think
they're still there.
I think last time I walked by there was probably 6 months ago, and they were
I
still
haven't been
there.
there in 20 years, so
So that was about 6 months
Utrecht.
ago. So is Utrecht. Like I said, it was a great store on Bond called the Art Store, and they eventually turned into a Dick Blick. Then those are the only two that I remember clearly. There were some stationary stores on the other side of was it Broadway? But they were actual stationary stores. So they weren't very heavy with generic art supplies. You get a pen or two there. And I think there's also was a what was it called? Uh there's one across the street from the Limelight. Or there's an art store in that area that
Okay.
was
Dick
where
Blick is down there, I think. Yeah.
there
Is it
was one that was what is his name? The one
is it
that Marvel eventually sent their paper to.
Oh, okay.
Is it Sam Flax?
I haven't seen a Sam Flax in a long time, but
Yes,
there's definitely I think the Limelight is on 6th Avenue, right? Because I think I
I
walked
believe
past
so.
it.
Yes.
Dick Blick is down is near it on 6th Avenue. May have been Sam Flax in the past, but it's a Dick Blick now.
It's very well possible
Yeah.
that's the store I'm thinking of. And that was the last those are like the last three that I clearly remember still being in the city.
And Eric P says, "Did anyone get their $1 Copic marker? Did I miss early? You did miss earlier talk about it. I got R20 blush and Tit Goblin, though it's at his sister's, he says in DC, got BV00 Mauve Shadow. So, and I have about a third of the Copic markers. I got maybe 120 markers. I think they make 380. So I got one I already had, but my other one was, and I refill them, so I'm not buying markers over and over. It says, Chris, do you have any local art stores in your whereabouts?
Yeah, Michael's.
You had a Michael's? Okay. Arts and crafts store. That's about the best we do in the suburbs. Michael's, and it used to be AC Moore, and they're okay for some stuff, but they're really an arts and crafts store, so they don't have like professional stuff all the time, but they got some decent stuff.
Yeah, Michael's has worked in a pinch many
Yeah,
times. I have one in Westchester, so I could take a bus up, and there are two in Manhattan that I'm aware of.
yeah. There's one about 20 minutes. So here's a question. I was trying to figure out where the nearest comic shop is to 14th Street and 7th Avenue, where I'm at, and it got me to thinking. In New York City, what would you consider a comic shop that's nearby? Because I figure in New York City, a comic shop that's nearby is one that you can go to on your lunch hour. So it's got to be no more than, I mean, a 20-minute walk would be pushing it. I'm not sure if a 20-minute walk away would be nearby. I think nearby would be more like a 10-minute walk. 10 minutes to walk to the comic shop, then maybe 20 minutes to walk around, 10 minutes to walk back, and you still got 20 minutes to eat your lunch. If it's 20 minutes away, you got to walk for 20 minutes. You got to look around the comic shop for 20 minutes. You got to walk back for 20 minutes. So you're eating your lunch as you're walking. So I'm like, what would you consider? I would say a 10-minute walk would be nearby. Anything else is not.
Yeah, I think I would consider that as well, especially in New York City.
Yeah, New York City, I'm talking.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, the funny thing was, it's like, back in the 90s, there was a comic book shop. There was three on 23rd Street.
Yeah.
So you had the one that was by the School of Visual Arts. Then you had Cosmic Comics near
Right.
the Flatiron, and then past the Flatiron, there was another comic book shop. And so just on 23rd Street alone, there was three
Right.
shops. At least Cosmic Comic was that 20-minute walk before we
Right.
started going to
Cosmic Comics was probably less than a 20-minute walk.
probably.
That was probably more like a 10, maybe depending on a faster. But that was within that was nearby, I would say. Like Hanley's, I'd say was nearby. That
Yes.
was 34th. You had to go from 28th to 34th and over an avenue or two. So that was I would say Hanley's was probably 15 minutes. So it was doable at lunchtime. Maybe
Yes.
not close by, but easily doable. 20 minutes walk is that's the limit.
That's the
doable at lunchtime.
So Cosmic would have been 10 minutes.
Yeah. That just popped into my head as I was like, where can I? Because one of my students said there's no comic shops nearby. And so I decided to look and see if there were. And actually, the closest one to 14th and 7th is Forbidden Planet, which is according to the map, is about a 10-minute walk away. So I was like, I think that's nearby. Let's see. Saul says all retail is under threat by Amazon. Oh yeah, and comic book stores may go away or just transform into pop culture shops. Not sure if the Diamond Chapter 11 will do even more damage, but yeah, we've discussed Diamond Chapter 11. I think it's going to be most damage to indie books, not Marvel or DC, which is good news for the comic shops. Yeah. Not so much good news for me. Eric P. got YG03 yellow green. I think that's one I have. Let's see. Nope, I've got YG06 yellowish green. So there's yellow green and yellowish green. Yellowish green is a pretty good color. YG06. But I do not have YG03. Eric P. We used to have university bookstores which carried art supplies in town, but they have all closed. Yeah, I don't think there's any art supply stores left in my county. There was not many to begin with. There's like Rockland Art Supplies in Nanuet. That's the only one. There used to be a mall store called a Koenig Art Emporium, but that was about it.
Yeah, I have not been near FIT. They used to have a store across the street from them, and I think the School of Visual Arts also had a store next to them.
They had a store, right? I remember that.
And then just in general, Joe Kubert's school also had a store connected to the school as well.
Infinity says, plus you have to factor in those downtown gateways to parallel universes. Yeah, can you get there in time? Sleepy says, New York City sounds like a dead zone compared to Portland, both for indie art stores and comic shops. Oh yeah, there are so many for lease stores in Manhattan. That is crazy because the landlords don't want to lease them for less money than they'll take the tax write-off. Let's see, Tit Goblin. I went to 2 stores this week and both had random beat-up back issues, all for $10 each. Typical places that don't know the real going rate, but they were all $2 at best. Yeah, that's how it happens at some of those antique stores with comics. Eric P., you can draw Ninja Turtles with that and the Hulk. That's with the yellow green. Saul says, you're right. Diamond is not hurting Marvel and DC. They're destroying themselves all by themselves without any help. But they're doing the best they can with what they got.
I'm still not sure how international comic stores are going to get their books.
That's right. Diamond did a lot internationally, didn't they?
Diamond still had the international exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's up for sale now too. That you could just buy that portion of Diamond if you want to.
Now I know that graphic novels are not distributed to bookstores by Diamond.
Right.
But I don't know about that. Of course, Diamond distributes the graphic novels to comic shops, but not to bookstores. Bookstores, they use the same international distributors as the book publishers.
Want to show us another comic, Wilson?
Sure. So we have here, continuing the storyline, the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man number 68.
Uh-huh. Look at those big bug eyes. The logo down the bottom. What's that craziness?
Where he has that costume that he has, because there's a little bit of magic going on.
Okay. He's got a spider scarf.
Yep, because scarves means magic.
Ha, ha. The scarf of Cytorak. Or Sidorak. How do you say that?
I say Sidorak.
Yeah.
I think I've always said Cytorak, but I've heard other people say Sidorak, so I don't know.
Although I have once seen there was the storyline in the Avengers where there was a bunch of guys who used artifacts from the mystical artifacts, and they had alliteration, and the alliteration for Sidorak would require that you pronounce it Kitarak, as if it was a Celtic word.
Huh.
But I don't see anybody doing it, and I never
That's
got used to
interesting.
it. So
Yeah, I have no idea. Have you read any of that 9 Deaths of Spider-Man yet? Or 8 deaths, however many deaths it is?
8th death, and I know that because I read it on the title.
All right.
So, no.
One of these days he'll get around to it.
One of these days I'll get to reading it.
And what are you working on tonight, Chris?
I'm working on coloring this.
Uh-huh. Let's see. Who is that with the Fantastic Four?
That is a guy called Captain Terrificon.
Captain Terrificon. Okay, is this for the Terrificon?
This is for Terrificon, and this is a reworking of Fantastic Four #3 cover.
Okay.
is that going to be for a con exclusive cover, or for their poster?
I think he's going to use it as a flyer.
Oh, Tit Goblin says Chris needs to talk about Spider-Man's magic scarf and his pronunciations in the superfan voice.
So I can't because I don't know anything about the scarves. Here's another piece for the same, also for
Captain
Terrificon.
And Superman.
This is based on, I forget the number of it, but it's a cover with Superman squaring off initially against Captain Marvel.
Who are all those people down the bottom? Oh, look at them. They're having a good time.
It's just a crowd of people. The original cover is Superman 276.
Okay.
Where he's squaring off against Captain Thunder, who looks like a guy they changed at the last minute because they thought they were going to have the rights to Captain Marvel, but they didn't yet.
Yep.
That explains why Superman has 1970s hair.
Very thick, luxurious 1970s hair.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, it was like the cover was basically Captain Marvel, and they just removed the Thunderbolt and put a sun symbol.
Exactly. Which everyone equates with thunder.
Thunder. I got another James Tynion book. World Tree, issue 13 by James Tinian, art by Fernando Blanco, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Aditya Bidikar. And this woman right here on the cover is sort of a villain of the piece. She's been taken over by the undernet, whatever living thing that lives underneath the internet that these people defeated many years ago. And last issue, if you remember me talking about it, it kind of gave her flashback origin story of how when she was like a 13-year-old kid, she got taken over by the undernet. And now we get more of that story told in this really wild storytelling style. The art is really nice in this. I enjoyed it a whole lot. And it's just very, cyber. So this is more of her story. And it looks somehow like her future self is talking to her past self and their stuff. And her brother was trying to save her, but it didn't happen. So I think this next story might be all about her and how she kind of came to be in this tale. Oh, and also, let's see, I just saw an ad here for, looks like, I guess next week we're going to have a new issue of Monstrous, because it says February 2025, and they've taken a little hiatus for the last few months on Monstrous. But another good issue of World Tree. Good stuff. What? Have you read any good comics lately, Chris?
I guess not. Can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Haven't been to the comic shop in ages?
No.
Uh-oh. Tit Goblin says, when superfans don't know anything, they never admit it and just say it all sucks. Magic scarves suck.
First of all, when you wear a magic scarf, first of all, it doesn't matter how tight you wrap the scarf around you. If you wrap it around your neck one time versus wrapping around 2 or 3 times, does it increase or decrease the amount of magic? That is question number 1.
All the unanswered questions about magic scarves. Oh, let me show you something I got on eBay this week. Bum, bum, bum. I got Gabriel Rodriguez's Lock and Key Artist Edition Covers portfolio. Originally had a $40 cover price. I got it shipped and taxed for just below $25. But if you've never seen one of these, it's like an artist edition. But it's like an artist edition and it's how it's printed. But they're printed on individual sheets because there's 12 sheets of these covers from Lock and Key. You can see his blue line. Here's one thing I got to show you, though. I find this interesting. Because he's drawn some of these covers in blue line. There's one. But he's like filling in blacks with the blue line. But he never fills them in black. And I'm like, did he change his mind? Or was he filling in those digitally?
He might be filling those in digitally. He might have ran out of ink.
Yeah. But he's filling in all these up. Like, look at this one. He's got all this other black filled in. But on that guy's face, he didn't fill in the black at all. I'm going to have to find I have these in collected editions. So I don't have them. I'm going to find the original covers, the printed covers, and compare and contrast. So I found that, maybe he is filling it in digitally.
He might be filling them in a color
Might
instead
be
of
filling them
fully
in a
black.
color,
Yeah.
but he's definitely filling them in with blue line. So it's usually when you fill in with blue line, fills in with black in the final piece, but not in this case. So I find that I was like, I'm gonna have to find the covers just so I can look. I'll have to dig out because it says Lock and Key, Crown of Shadows, #3, and I've got all the books up there. Do they say Crown of Shadows? Maybe I should look. Let me see if one of the books says Crown of Shadows. They're right back there on my shelf. Whoa, I'm knocking things down. I have to stand up on my chair. Lock and Key, Clockwork, Key, Crown. There we go. That one says Crown of Shadows. Let's see if his face was indeed blacked in or held in color.
I'm going to say held in color. My vote.
You would be right. There it is, held in color.
And a gradient hold, too, which is nice.
Yeah. So that's what he was doing. And even though he was filling in he was filling it in with black, interesting. It's the fun stuff you get to see when you get to see the original art. Oh, and I also like, remember when I was telling you the story about our friend Ed who bought what he thought might have been an original page of Todd McFarlane artwork?
Right.
It ended up not being. And I think he said it was a page torn out of it ended up being a page torn out of an artist edition that he paid $200 for. But on the back of these, it says, "This is not original art." Just in case any shady characters start wanting to sell these as original art. Though I think the paper's only 1-ply. It's not quite as thick as 2-ply Bristol. But yeah, if you want to buy this for only $25, I think there's still some in the guy's eBay store. Put in because I've had this for a while on my watch list, and like a lot of people have, like I said, it was a $40 price originally, so you see it a lot on eBay at like $60, which of course I had no interest in paying for it. But for $25, it's a nice little deal.
Yeah. It's like today I saw in the comic book shop that they have a Jack Kirby covers.
Ah.
So it's a book of just Jack's covers.
Wow, I don't think I've seen that one.
And it's a pretty hefty sized book too. I think it was a $50 price tag on it. And it was like, well, I'm going to hold off for a bit.
It wasn't an artist edition. It was just, Jack Kirby's Marvel covers. I think I did see, but like Marvel wasn't publishing it. It was like Fantagraphics or something.
No, it was.
Was it Abrams?
Oh, no, it was the other one. It starts with a T.
Taschen?
Taschen.
It was Taschen.
I believe it was Taschen. Yes.
Okay.
Like I saw that, I was like, this is great, but I'm not going to pick it up at the moment. So I opted instead for Carnage #1 with the Chris Giarrusso cover.
Look what he found.
That I did not find last week.
Yeah.
When it came out, but it was on the shelf this week.
All right.
So for some reason, the covers were hidden last week, but I was able to dig one out.
Yeah, because I got it last week, and he was like, I didn't even see that.
Yep. I did pick it up, so I'm looking forward to reading that.
Yeah, was it like I said last week? It was a pretty good comic, and it was like a straight up horror comic. It was kind of interesting. Let's see. Eric P says that Eddie Brock Carnage #1 that I got for a Chris cover has a better issue than I expected. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I was talking about it last week, and I was like, you know what? This is a pretty good comic. Like, it surprised me how much it was a straight up horror comic. But is that the only Eddie Brock cover you're doing, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. But he'll have his 15 handbook covers coming out in April.
Yes.
Which means they should be coming into final order cutoff soon. I'll let you know, because none of them have been in final order cutoff yet.
Yeah, I got to make sure I'm on top of that.
I will certainly let you know when I see them.
Thank you.
Let's see. That Kirby covers came out this week. Okay. Eric P says, I wonder how prevalent fake pages are that are light box from artist editions and then doctored up with compare. I think they're not even doctored up. Dark Horse put out that Kirby covers book. Okay, it was a Dark Horse book.
Oh.
Yeah, if it was Taschen, it wouldn't be $50. It'd be $150. The one that my friend Ed ended up getting, and this is how con artists get you. He saw the page somewhere in like not a comic book thing. And he was trying to figure out if it was authentic or not. I think it was originally listed at $300, and the guy gave it to him for $200. And the guy was like, I don't know if it's real or not. You know, and yada, yada, yada. So he's not selling it as an authentic page. So you know you're taking a risk when you're buying it. But you're like, ooh, if I've won the lottery if it's the real page, you know. So he ended up getting it and found. So like I said, I don't even think they have to light box stuff. I think they'll just tear it out of an artist edition and try to make $200 off it.
Yeah, for a while, Macari was full of single pages from artist editions.
Yeah.
And not necessarily saying it's original art. And I picked one up because it was $10 or something like that, $5 or $10, because I wanted to see how good of a scan it was, and it was terrible. So it wasn't even like from the artist edition. It looks like it was a copy from the artist edition, and it was like it was just terrible.
Yeah, so I think that's a lot easier than light boxing a page. It's just printing one out, scanning it in, and printing it out. And I don't know if he ever did it. The guy runs my comic shop, because I think he saw other people probably like that doing it. He was thinking, because he has artist editions that he hasn't been able to sell, he's like, you know, I can cut the pages out and sell them for $5 or $10 as a print. So there's probably shops doing that too, I would imagine. I don't think he thought of that on his own. I don't know if he ever actually did it.
There's definitely a market for that.
Yeah.
You know, especially on eBay. As long as you're upfront with everybody.
Right.
You know, people
get that Marvel covers book and sell people their favorite covers individually. Page torn from Marvel covers.
You know,
I've seen damaged.
I've seen individual pages from magazines sell better by itself than the magazine itself, because some people want that vintage ad of, you know, whatever. And I've seen people sell comic book ads that way. You know, they're cut right out of the comic books.
Just saw a page from a CGC single page from Batman #1. So people CGC single pages too from, like, you know, Batman #1 or Superman #1.
Yeah.
Not from Eddie Brock Carnage #1. Tis Goblins, I guess most people with the skills to make fakes won't, because they know it's morally shitty thing to do. No, I just think that it's a lot of work to fake a comic book cover when you can just scan it in and print it out. And there are more people who can scan it in and print it out than can fake a comic book cover. I would say there's, like, at a guess, I would say in the whole country, the number of people who could fake Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1 cover? 1,000? Maybe? And how many of them would want to? When the number of people who can fake Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1 by making their own printout is 30,000. They're much more likely to do it. I mean, I don't want to say I'm faking anything, but I have found scans of original art online and printed them myself just to see what they look like. Just to keep my printer running or whatever, just because I'm bored that day and want a project to do. And found some printout. I can't even remember what ones I did. And I also print out the original covers, as you've seen here, like the actual cover art to some comic I bought that I like to, and blow it up to 11x7. I've shown those on here before, but I've also done that just with some random page of original art. Well, let me print that out. So I think there's many more people with that skill.
Yeah.
And I wish when Ed was asking, because Ed, if you remember the story from a couple months ago, sent me a picture of, because all he had to go on was a picture of the original art. He's like, do you think this is authentic? I'm like, it looks authentic, but it's just a picture. I wish he had told me that he looked it up and that page had sold at a heritage auction like 10 years ago for $22,000. I'm like, there's no way that page is showing up in some random auction by some guy who doesn't know if it's authentic or not for $300. No. Anybody who's spending $22,000 on that page of art isn't losing it. He's selling it for $30,000 if he has to.
Yeah.
So I wish I had known that. I would have told
stuff does get stolen.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But stuff that gets stolen doesn't, in a $22,000 page of art that gets stolen doesn't show up on an internet auction for $300. It gets sold to some private collector for $25,000.
You sound like somebody. Imagine. You sound like somebody who was hired by the people who stole it.
I have original Kirby's and Ditkos all over the place, but I can't show them to you.
That's right. I was the one that sold them to him.
You were Gil Kane's partner.
Yes.
Oh no, Gil Kane was the master. I only learned from him, but I was his partner.
Eric P asks, did you see that in May Marvel is issuing a facsimile edition of FF number 48? I did not see that, but I got issues 1 and 2 in facsimiles, and we were told on here a few weeks ago that they're going to be doing the first 12 issues of Marvel facsimile editions, and now we know why. Because I think it was last week. Last week I said they're putting out a facsimile hardcover.
I think you did mention.
Yeah, I think I meant of the first one is going to be of the black suit Spider-Man that you've been buying.
Right.
I think they were calling them archive editions. So it's gonna be like the first. They're gonna be like Masterworks, only of the facsimiles. So they'll have all the ads in them, which I don't think I'd ever buy. I mean, I've said this before, I like the facsimile editions because they turn them back into comics again. If you have Fantastic Four #1, it is no longer a comic book. It is an expensive collectible. You're not picking up your original Fantastic Four #1 and looking through it and flipping through the pages. You're just not. Because it's, an expensive collectible. So making facsimiles makes them comic books again that you can look like as comic books. So I don't think I need that in an archive. I'm
Right.
okay with the Masterworks not having the ads in them.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I already have that Spider-Man. That's the Saga of the Black Costume. I
Yeah,
have it in a soft cover trade paperback.
right.
That's signed by Tom DeFalco,
If you
and
actually want to read it, you don't want the
and
ads in it.
exactly because you just want to read through the story itself because you have that whole book.
Mhm.
Speaking of
But
facsimile,
I'll definitely pick up that issue 48 when it comes for final order cutoff.
You know that the old people who were into EC Comics and
Yep.
Warren magazines, they complain a lot that any reprints of those comics don't have the original ads
Yep.
because they like remembering X-ray specs.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a market for them. You're right. Those guys who they probably would never buy a facsimile. They want it as a hardcover collected
Well,
edition.
they kind of like the facsimiles. What
Yeah,
they want is for every trade paperback and hardcover collection to also have the ads,
right.
which is
But
unfeasible.
well, like I said, I'm not interested in all the ads in those. But I think like you mentioning those people, there probably are people who will. I mean, I'm certain there are people who will buy the facsimiles in a hardcover.
Sure, but let's suppose that you're doing a hardcover of 10 comics.
Right.
Those will have about 200, 200
Mm-hmm.
between 200 and 240 pages of stories, including the covers. Now, if you add up the ads,
Mm-hmm.
that's another 200 pages that you have to add, and that makes it more expensive. And you're
Well,
all
that's why I think they're putting them out as facsimiles first. They're making all their production money on these. So then putting it in a hardcover is a lot less expensive. Hence they
but
can
but still,
hence all the assholes can wait for us to subsidize them.
it's an it's an extra 12 pages per comic, and if it's 12 comics, it's an extra 140 pages.
Oh yeah.
It makes the book expensive whether you already have the production costs laid down or not.
it
Yeah.
it
Oh,
also
it is. But
yeah, but there's also the thing with printing that sometimes an extra 100 pages, it's not that much a difference in
no.
price.
The
Uh,
production price is more than the book price for those extra
Mhm.
pages. I would
yeah.
guess.
hmm
I would guess. Let's see. Steve Uter says PS Art Golden Age volume includes ads. Which ones are the PSR? Are those because I think like those ones that like print from old scans? I think they print the ads because they're not doing much production on them. So they're just like, yeah, print them all. It's easier. Tit Goblin says, I saw Jim Lee Batman facsimile this week and it made me feel old when I saw the PlayStation 2 ads. That'll do it. Eric P says, I am on record saying that I want a hardcover of DC's house ads from the 80s. If they threw in the Meanwhile columns to boot, that would be a pre-order for me.
Well, yeah, that would actually be an interesting artifact. For example, at Marvel, a collection of the bullpen bulletins of that year, and any promotional material that they use that they printed out
Yeah.
on the comics. So that would be an interesting artifact. But I don't think they're necessary that it's necessary to have that month's bullpen bulletins if you're reprinting Black Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Question.
Mhm.
Question for the group: have they ever collected the hostess ads?
They may
I don't think
have.
so.
I have a vague memory of them collecting the hostess ads, but I don't know if that memory is real or not. Ooh, that's a good question because
They ran in Marvel and DC and Archie too, I think.
Yeah, I remember Marvel, I think, collecting the but I'm not 100% sure. I may have just read enough times people wanting them to collect them that I think it's real.
Well, there's a
I'd have to look
Netsy
that up.
store that they're doing it for $20, but it's the unofficial Marvel Comics Hostess Heads collection. Yeah, but this
Oh, there's
is
an unofficial one that someone put together. Sleepy says
yeah.
yes has ugly scans. Yeah, they'll add the. It's more trouble for them to take the ads out than to leave them in because they're doing it as cheaply as possible. Saul says comics are too expensive with or without ad pages. I bought 2 comics last week for $10. Oh yeah, I love them, but let's get real. The value of floppies is poor. That's because that's because they're subsidizing the collected editions.
Hey, digest Disney comics in Italy have are 240 pages and they only cost $5.
There you go. Let's see another comic I got this week.
And they're all new stories too.
Is Null Hunter, the Olympus Saga, and there's the labor of Hercules this week, this month. I'm not sure what that labor is, but he has to hold up something. Did Hercules hold up the heavens?
Yes, he
Yes.
traded places with Atlas.
Ah,
So Atlas could go do something for Hercules, and then Hercules was holding up the heavens, or it was the earth itself, and then Atlas is like, "Oh, I don't want to, come back to the job."
so in this issue, our hero, this guy, I don't even know his name. Whatever this guy's name is. He's on a mission on some planet. This is like a cyberpunk retelling, sci-fi cyberpunk, let's say, because this is mostly a sci-fi issue. There he is lifting up something on the cover, where he ends up going into like this cave system to reboot this giant machine, and the whole ceiling comes down on him, and he has to hold it up. So that's the labor I'm getting. But it was a nice issue. I'm enjoying this. Was it Steve Walsh? Not Steve Walsh. Michael Walsh is writing it. Gustavo Vargas is on the art. Becca Carey, letters and design. Laura Dragon, the flatter. And the back cover illustration by Artyom Trakhanov. He's doing our Labors of Hercules illustration. Or maybe that's public domain. I don't know. I don't know who Artyom Trakhanov is. So maybe that's some old thing that they're picking up from the public domain. Who knows? So look it up.
How do you spell that?
It's Artyom is the first name, and Trakhanov is the second name. Artyom Trakhanov.
Yeah, so this looks like no, it's real. It's a real guy. He's got an Instagram.
I just don't know if he was drawing these drawings 100 years ago or is alive now and making them.
No, he's alive now and making them.
Okay, because they're clearly supposed to look like old drawings. That's all I didn't know.
Comics that is worked on. So First Knife, Seven Deadly Sins. First Knife was published by Image in 2020.
Yes, what?
He did a mini series called First Knife at Image in 2020.
Okay.
All right. In sci-fi adventure equal parts Conan the Barbarian, Nausicaa, and Zardoz.
Zardoz.
That's in the hot ruins of the far future North America, a slave stumbles across an ancient and bloody power. A conqueror bargains with godlike beings. A soldier tries to bring back his lost world. As the full moon approaches, the remaining humans on Earth find themselves standing between the forces that once nearly destroyed it.
I haven't seen Zardoz in 20 years. I should watch it again sometime.
He also did something at TKO called The Seven Deadly Sins. Written by
Eric B says, wait, there's a Zardoz comic?
No. It's inspired by Conan, Nausicaa, and Zardoz. That's what they say.
Ah.
Yeah. The writer is Simon Roy.
I have once again I have a vague memory of an actual Zardoz comic, but I don't know if it's real.
No, that was a Superman villain.
Yeah, I remember him too. No, one that came out from like IDW or somebody. But like I said, it may not be real. You know how memory is. Sometimes you talk about something or you read about somebody talking about something and it becomes real to you.
Okay, and there's one that Trakhanov wrote and drew, but only exists as a digital comic. It's called Slavic Nihilism. Sounds appropriate.
Do you have another comic for us, Wilson?
I do, since we've been talking about facsimile editions. I got the Crisis on Infinite Earth, issue number 11.
Wow, just one issue away from the end.
Pretty much. And this
wow,
is,
I don't remember that cover at all.
The funny thing is, I was looking at it at the stands, and I went to look at the alternate covers just to make sure that this was the regular book, because I vaguely remember it being basically a cover of panels.
Yeah.
And it was like, sure enough, this is the regular issue. With a nice classic ad for Go Voltron Force on the back.
Huh. By the way, I just saw someone posted on TikTok a Key and Peele sketch where they were supposed to be like a Voltron Force kind of thing. And I forget who's Key and who's Peele, but one of them was in it.
Power Falcons.
What was that?
The Power Falcons.
The Power Falcons.
Yeah.
That was it. I'd never seen that before.
And Jordan was in the Green Falcon, but they kept calling him the Black Falcon.
Right, because he's a black guy, so they kept calling him Black Falcon. And they kept going, "No, I'm the Green Falcon."
Peele was the Native American Falcon.
Ah, that's right. It was just quite funny that they kept insisting on calling him Black Falcon. And he kept insisting he's all
I'm
green.
The Green Falcon. And so if you tell the Black Falcon to do something you want me to do, I'm not gonna. I'm in the Green Falcon, so I'm not gonna.
That was funny stuff. That just popped into my head seeing the Voltron ad. And the second story arc of the Power Fantasy has started. Caspar Wingard and Kieran Gillen. And this is the one that's all about superheroes trying not to fight so they don't destroy the world. Already all of Europe has been destroyed in some super fight. So, some nice artwork. There's a lot of talking in this one as they try to reach agreements to not fight. So it's good. I really enjoy this one. I like Caspar Wingard's art. I like Kieran Gillen's writing. So this was like an automatic must-buy for me. And it has not let me down.
What are they fighting about?
Read the first trade paperback of Power Fantasy. It was good. What are they fighting about? Let's see. The first issue, they were fighting about the United States government trying to kill the Heavy, who is one of the heroes. So,
shouldn't they fight the United States government then?
Hold on a second. And like the first, I think it was in the first or second issue. It was these guys. Matter of fact, in this issue they power rank them by how many millions of people they could kill. So Santa Valentina, extra-dimensional entity, estimated potential kills per hour, 6 billion. Jackie Magnus, peak of the pyramid, estimated potential kills per hour, 750 million. HN Lux estimated kills per hour, 333 million. So this is the scale of power they're on. Brother Ray Heavy Harris estimated kills per hour, 6 billion. So, as you can imagine,
Literal overkill.
yes. And the Heavy had already got into some sort of dispute with the United States government. I mean, these guys are atomic bombs bigger than. And he already threatened that he was going to destroy all of Texas if the United States government tried to kill him. And they did. This is like in the first issue. Because, as a matter of fact, it was one of the guys in here. Jack Magnus, Peak of the Pyramid, estimated potential kills per hour, 750 million. And he was the guy who had something to do with the destruction of Europe. I don't think he destroyed Europe, but someone came in, I think it was Santa Valentina, 6 billion deaths per. She was the one who came in and tried to take over Europe, and we haven't gotten the story yet. Just it happened like 10 years ago, and Jackie Magnus tried to stop her, and that's how Europe is now just gone. So he was the one who sold the United States government the weapons to kill. It was like a satellite weapon to kill the Heavy, except it didn't kill the Heavy. And then HN Lux is the guy who is trying to keep the peace. He's the one who's got all sorts of mental powers that he can do things at a distance. So he made a deal with the Heavy to not destroy all of Texas. Instead, HN will kill the president, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, their entire families, and anybody who had anything to do with them. So he ended up killing, hundreds and hundreds of people, but that kept the Heavy from killing millions and millions of people. And they all, and now this guy right here, Jackie Magnus, who the second story arc is him, who sold the weapons to the U.S. and doesn't trust the other guys, is now in alliance with the U.S. government. They gave him a job as, I don't know, Secretary of Defense or something. So his job is now to keep the other superheroes in line, unless one of the other guys gets mad at him. And there was also a story, what's her name? Morishida Matsumi, Deconstructa. Her power is disassociation kaiju. Estimated potential kills per hour, 250 million. If she gets mad, a kaiju shows up and stomps the city. She has no control over the kaiju. She's not directing the kaiju. It's just her emotions that makes it happen. So she has to be kept happy.
Okay.
She's not even trying to do that. So it's really interesting stuff. I enjoy it thoroughly. Power fantasy.
Okay.
And he got the idea, Kieran Gillen, from his latest X-Men story, where he was writing about the Omega-powered X-Men who were like super powerful too, and what they were up to. So he was like, I wonder what would happen if these guys actually fought and killed tens and 20s and hundreds of millions of people. Let's see. The people with the powers are trying to control each other, not to wipe out humanity. Yes, that's what they're trying to keep each other under control so humanity doesn't get wiped out. They're not trying to take over humanity. They're trying not to kill humanity. And then also the power, like Europe is gone because that woman who destroyed Europe during the fight was extra dimensional. So she just showed up in our dimension looking to take stuff over. So what do they do about a threat like that doesn't destroy all of Europe? So it's an interesting book, a take on superheroes that we kind of haven't seen before. let's try not to fight each other because everybody will die if we do.
Exactly.
Any other comics for us, Wilson?
Yes, the last book that I got that I didn't read is Power Rangers Prime by Boom Studios.
Oh, Boom
Issue
doing the Power Rangers.
issue number 4.
Have they been doing Power Rangers and not IDW?
I think so.
I don't even
Or
remember. I just assume IDW does everything licensed.
right.
Or Dynamite. So.
IDW may have done Power Rangers, but
Yeah.
this one is
Now Boom is.
Now Boom is doing it. This is its own series, but as I'm flipping through it, I'm not too sure what's going on, but I'm seeing costumes from other um, Power Rangers like characters.
Okay.
So it looks like I don't know the name of all these, but I'm not sure if this was
Have you read any
either.
of the series yet?
I have not read any of this series yet, but these characters here are from other
Oh, okay.
Sentai type superheroes.
Right.
I don't want to say Beetleborgs, but there's something similar, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Marvel, I think, did also do some of these comics when they were doing Power Rangers. This was like one of the other books.
Is it one of those Jespion?
I do not know.
I think I remember Jespion.
And there was different iterations of the Power Rangers too, right? Like
Yes, because they had this thing called Shattered Grid, which they were like bringing in Power Rangers from um, their own little multiverse. In
okay.
Japan, every few years it was like a new team of
Right.
5 kids, but they kind of connected them
You got too
in a
old. You're
way,
off the show.
pretty much. And then it was like, we got a new set of toys coming in. So
They're like Menudo.
exactly. That's actually a really good close comparison. But they would do a different name, so you would have like Power Rangers, Thunder Force, or what have you. So the stuff that we saw in the 90s was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but that was something close to like the 7th or 8th iteration of these things. That was just the one that was the easier to basically edit that footage and then just put in the American actors. So all the Power Rangers, or just about all the Power Rangers we've seen since the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, have been those other shows where they would edit the footage and then basically add in American actors for that. So that's why you always had a new group of 5 kids with a new group of toys.
Okay. Go Power Rangers. Let's see. The last comic I got this week is Howl #2. And if you remember, this is the one that takes place New York City, I think Greenwich Village, 1959. And it's an alien invasion story, but I think the invaders are like fungus. And it's sort of like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Let's see. In the back here, we have, okay. If you enjoy Howl, you might want to binge on my influences. Here's a watch list. The Apartment by Billy Wilder. Bell, Book, and Candle by Richard Quinn. Bucket of Blood by Roger Corman. Little Shop of Horrors by Roger Corman. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, Don Siegel, 1978, Philip Kaufman. John Carpenter's The Thing, 1982. So we get to see these. And also what's interesting, it appears she has made the lead character, Alyssa Whitney, is the writer. Who's the artist? The artist was Morrissey. Remember we discussed him, I think, last month. We looked him up. Mauricet. I forget what country he came from. But apparently she made the 2 lead characters are based on her parents who lived in New York City then. And her mother, I think her father was the writer. Ziva Quitney was her mother's name. What was her father's name? Well, I think it was a sci-fi writer. Where's his name? Joyce. My mother, Ziva Quitney, never wrote about her experiences in the mid to late 50s when she lived on 44 Perry Street, walking with my father, Robert Sheckley, an up-and-coming science fiction writer. So if anybody knows who Robert Sheckley is, I think Sleepy Reader would have the only chance of knowing who he is. An up-and-coming, that was her father. So she's kind of using her mother and father as the basis of the characters for this. And what's interesting, there's what one of the aliens taking over a human body looks like at whatever stage this is. But it's like, what's interesting is, too, the people have been, she is like a psychiatrist who's this, and these are all guys who have been taken over by this alien, but they're having a hard time adjusting to human bodies because they're fungus. And they're like, all the, and their experience now in a human body isn't the same as their normal everyday experience. And she's like, buck up, little fungus. You got to do this right. What is this?
So they need therapy.
They need therapy. So she's giving them therapy. And she's they're doing like human therapy. Yeah, man, to harmonize these dissident rhythms of self. Oh, I can dig it. But how do we spread our spores? How do we spread our spores and encourage their fruiting bodies to flourish without sacrificing our own ability to grow as individuals? Enough. Selfhood is not your goal, but that is the dying plant, still hankering for the security of the familiar. But you are not the dying plant. You feed on the dying plant and become your truest self. So it's like they need therapy to take over human. So it's interesting so far. And I really like the art. It's terrific. There's the back cover without the, I guess this is what the aliens are, or that will become. And let's see, extra, remembering the real life Star of Howl and Self-Defense by Matt. There's also it's from Ahoy Comics, and they like to give you text in the backup. So this is a little one-page courtroom story about, see that person right there? That's a zombie. And it's the trial of a zombie who came back to life and murdered the person who killed her. And now she's on trial for murder. She claimed self-defense, but since she was undead already, she couldn't die. It's this one-page legal story about what happens if a zombie kills the person who killed them. It's like, that's a pretty amusing story. And how the court system would have to handle it. Oh, Eric P. knows the name.
He's
I know
a
the
science
name,
fiction
Robert
writer.
Shep.
He's a science fiction writer, I think.
Oh, yeah. He said she was not. I guess I just have no idea. 62 Lefty Blues says, sounds similar to a manga I started reading called Two Alien Brothers. Two aliens disguising as humans in Japan.
It's called Two Brothers.
Eric P., I have a friend who is a fan. As I recall, Sheckley leaned into the absurd comic side of sci-fi. I've seen the film The 10th Victim, which was based on his short story. And Saul says, reading some news about IDW, seemed that the Diamond bankruptcy may sink them because IDW needed to pay Penguin Random House for the debt of Diamond. It's a house of... And IDW, I think, was already in trouble. Weren't they the company that got bought up a few years ago? And in order to save the company, the guy who bought it brought his son in to run it. And it's like son and daughter both work at IDW. So it's like, who knows if they could save it.
Well, speaking of companies that need saving, turns out we may not have a problem with getting comics in Europe after all.
Oh.
Unlike Diamond US, Diamond UK is profitable.
Okay. Did somebody buy it?
Not yet.
But somebody's gonna.
Yeah, Universal Distribution may be interested in buying the whole lot.
IDW needs to fix their logo. They're not going to fix it. They just came up with that one. Companies rarely fix their bad logos. They usually go out of, especially indie companies, they usually go out of business first.
They eventually come back to the original and the best. Like the Bullet logo is coming back to DC.
Yeah.
Or is back at DC.
But DC at least has a long history of changing their logo, whether people like the new one or not.
Very true.
This is only IDW's second logo that I know of. Maybe they've had 20 of them. Let's ask Chris. Have you seen the new IDW logo?
Yeah.
Do you see the W?
It took me a while, which is always the mark of a great logo.
Yeah. Randy had to point it out to me because I didn't see it at all. The Lore War. So let's see. If I was to rate my comics this week, how would I rate them? I like them all. Go Power Fantasy first. Howl second. You know what? I might go World Tree second. World Tree second. Whoops. Don't smash the corners. Howl third. Godzilla Heist fourth. Null Hunter fifth. And Let This One Be a Devil sixth. Well, though I'm buying some more Let This Be a Devil. So I like them all. But I think that's how I'd rank them. I've never ranked them before. Just figured I would. There's only 6 of them.
Yeah. I have only 5.
Maybe the mark of real comic companies, how many logos they've had. You're gonna rank them without having read them?
Yeah. So I'm going. So it's going to be Amazing Spider-Man. Going to be Eddie Brock Carnage.
That was a good one.
Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
G.I. Joe. And Power Rangers Prime. And it was very easy to rank these because I just put them in alphabetical order.
All right. That's some ranking system.
Oh, and since we were talking about art supplies, so this week I was working on those sketch cards on my art desk. I had picked this up at Five Below a while back, and it's just a regular wooden easel that turned out to be quite useful.
I think I have one similar to that, but I haven't used
these cards. Just because it's a smaller device that I was able to put right on my art desk and just work on it. So it had the right angle where I didn't have to hunch over. I was able to just lean over and work on it. So this is good for small card size items because I was working on 3 cards across, 3 cards down. So 9 cards all together to do one big image. And this was perfect for that. And again, something I just picked up on a whim from Five Below, of all places.
I picked up an electric pencil sharpener.
Neat.
I have not had an electric pen. I was a bit traumatized by sometime in the 90s. I've been using like the same hand cranked pencil sharpener, and also a little one like that. Sometime in the 90s, when I was not making a lot of money and particularly broke, I decided to buy an electric pencil sharpener. Top of the line. I forget who made it. Maybe X-Acto. It was sort of like this because it was a top down. If you want to buy a electric pencil sharpener, the top down ones are the best. And I think one thing I noticed about that one that's better than this one was that one had an automatic stop. I don't think this one has an automatic stop. Only sharpened one pencil in it. I was a little disappointed so far. But I had that. I was so happy to get that new electric pencil sharpener. It was like a luxury item for me then. It's like, ooh, electric pencil sharpener. Eh. About 6 months later, it broke. So it must have cost me $40. That was probably like half a day's pay at that time. And I was just like so disappointed and depressed that my new electric pencil sharpener broke. That was like a top of the line model that I never bought one again until now.
I still have my pencil sharpener that I had at Marvel.
Ah.
So I still have that, and I have
Is it one
used
of the X-Acto ones that's horizontal?
It's a horizontal one. I don't know if it's
But it's got
X-Acto.
suction cups on the bottom?
Yes, that it does.
I think Marvel had the X-Acto. They had some pretty good pencil sharpeners.
It's Panasonic Auto
Okay.
Stop.
There we go. I don't think this one has an auto. I was sharpening the pencil and it made my pencil a little too small. I was like, I think there's no auto stop in this. It'll grind the whole pencil down. Yeah, I recognize those.
So one of these, it still has like a Spider-Man
hologram
thing on top of it. I think it's Spider-Man. Hard to even see what it is. So I've had this, since Marvel.
Sharpened that pencil pretty well.
So I had this from Marvel, and I one day was like, it works good, it works fine. But I may want a new one, and it was an X-Acto top-down one.
Right.
I don't remember what I paid for it. I got it in, I think, at a Target or something like that, and I got it home. I used it just a handful of times, and the thing died on me.
We must have had the same model.
And it was like I was so upset, and I got to look in either Instagram or it may be one of my first 7 TikToks. I think I had made a posting about it, where it was like I have to pull back out the original one that I had for years, and that one still works. But the other one, like it was a top-down one. And I was, again, like you said, I was happy to get it because it's like, oh, this is cool. A new pencil sharpener, top down, and the damn thing just died on me. I don't even know how many
pencil sharpeners.
The problem was it was pretty to look at. Probably shouldn't have used it.
I believe mine. When I first started working at Marvel, I was making $63 a day. And I spent 40 of that dollars on a pencil sharpener, only for it to break. So that was a good chunk of money.
Next time, use the Bowie knife.
Yeah, I have. I had a art teacher showed us how to carve our pencils. And so I've sharpened pencils with an X-Acto knife a lot.
I've done that too.
I've got a pencil sharpener on the other side of this bookshelf back here that's been on that bookshelf since the 1960s. And I hand cranked one I still sharpen pencils with. I kind of bought this one on a whim just because I'm like, I have to get over that 90s pencil sharpener. I have to get over it. Even if I never used this one, I've gotten over it. But I'm still upset about it. Titcom says, I like those wooden drafts. Mine is from Montmartre. Horizontal X-Acto, I think it was $15. Yeah. The critique of the horizontal ones is sometimes you have to chase them around the desk to use them. But if they got good suction cups, you don't have to.
Yep, this one does.
X-Acto buzz sharpeners are here at the dollar stores, and they last a good while. $3 for 5 years is an okay value. I wanted to get. Have you seen those hand sharpeners that sharpen a pencil to like a 1-inch long point?
No,
I wanted to try one of those. I've got no reason to sharpen my pencil that way, but people who do a lot of side of the pencil shavings, shading, use those. But they're like $8 or $10 because they're hand ones.
So it was 2012 is when I picked up the X-Acto sharpener. So it's the X-Acto electric pencil sharpener. It's all black, the silver logo on it, and then it goes from the top.
Yes, mine was in the 90s, so probably the same model since then. I mean, I doubt they changed it.
I doubt so too.
I wonder if I bought it at Amazon. No, it was the 90s. So I don't think I could have. Unless I'm misremembering. Nope, all my Sharps are Sharpies. It was before Amazon.
I think I was so upset about it that day, I created a Facebook album called Art Tools. And there's just 3 images on there, which is that sharpener, an electric eraser, and the old Panasonic one. So it was like basically, here's what I got, and then this is what I went right back to. So I tagged you in Facebook, so you'll next time you go on there, you'll see the sharpener that the X-Acto ones.
I'll have to check that. Let's see. Kid Goblin asks, anyone pick up and are gifted a lot of art supplies, have a bucket of 4 trillion pencil sharpeners like me? No, but I could have been. I only have 2. My friend's son had a Godzilla bar mitzvah and passed out sketchbooks, pencils, and pencil sharpeners, little hand ones. And I think he had a bucket of them left over, but I only took 2 out of the bucket because I have them somewhere.
As a kid, I was gifted a lot of art supplies, but there was a good, I would say, 5-year period that many people kept giving me pastels. And I would have like 10 boxes of pastels that I had never used.
Those rock hard pastels that you get in high school or whatever?
Yeah. So I would get them, and I just put them on the shelf. And eventually I just had a stack of them that I never used, and I eventually got rid of them.
That's the pencil sharpener I use for like colored pencils and soft pencils. Universal, and because like soft and colored pencils you can't use an electric sharpener for. It is the lead is too soft and will break if you use an electric sharpener.
Which one is that? What's that called?
Is there a brand name on it? You can find them at any color grip. Oh, it's a Faber-Castell. Faber-Castell color grip. It's like $10 or something. I don't even remember. Maybe less. I've had this one for years and years and years. So many years, either the silver paint is wearing off or that's ink. I don't know which. Well, we should wrap it up for the night. It's been fun as always.
Oh, yeah.
Showing off lots of art supplies this week as well as comics. You have any final words for us, Chris?
Nope.
No final words from Chris. How about you, Paolo? Any final word?
Well, I may have a project for you to try to do in 2026.
Okay.
Because you'll need money. Remember how you were collecting all of the Marvel 10th anniversary covers?
Yep.
Window covers. Well, as a matter of fact, Marvel also had those type of covers in the timely 10th anniversary in 1949.
Oh, wow.
Not for all of the comics of that month, of every month specifically, but there are several. So being 1949 books, they're not cheap. But you could try going to Mike's Amazing World and look up Marvel covers from 1949 and see if there's one that catches your fancy. Because while they're not well treated, something like a Tessie the Typist might be a little cheaper to acquire should something catch your eye.
Okay.
So let's see if you can buy a 1949 book
I'll
and
have to
then
look.
bring it on.
Yeah, I didn't
Yes.
know that. That's interesting. Maybe that's where they got the design from. Who knows?
Mhm.
Well, John didn't tell me that.
Gil Kane was already doing some art for Marvel at the time, so.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Tit Goblin says, only yesterday I used glue my grandfather left me. It was from 1954. It still works somehow. You have a good night. We'll see you later, Saul. One last comment. These are a great weekly talk show that always helps me nudge my writing forward. Thank you, panel. Well, you're welcome, Finity. Any final words from you, Wilson?
Keep drawing.
Keep drawing.
That's what I
Buy
say on my
more comics.
TikToks to
And
to
use a
end the show.
Bowie. And use a Bowie knife to sharpen your pencils.
That's not a knife.
Or an X-Acto number 11. Where's mine? I've sharpened with this before many a time.
I've sharpened with an X-Acto. I've sharpened with the razor that comes with my Marvel Comics box cutter.
All right, here's some balloons for you. And some confetti. Got to end with that. And some lasers. Come on, lasers. There we go. Everybody have a good night out there.
See ya.